Hey everyone, it's Bruno Pozo here with Elvira Media. Today, let's talk about DJI's line of smartphone gimbals, the OSM or the OM series. DJI does a really good job of creating products that shoot amazing quality video just straight out of the box. This is true for all their products, whether it be the gimbals, smartphone gimbals, drones, action cams, etc. However, if you want to capture the best quality content with your smartphone, you're going to want to change a few settings with the DJI gimbals. Simple things like adjusting the horizon, making sure you set your white balance, and having manual controls over your video are some of the tips I'm going to share with you today. So let's hop right in and get to shooting. So the first thing you want to do with any of these gimbals is to try to get them as well balanced first before turning them on. With the Series 3, this is especially true because they have two axes that you have to manually set. But if you are on the OM4 or OM5, this isn't as important, but just know that if you don't have it well balanced, you may burn out the motors sooner than you would like. But if you do have the 4th or 5th gen smartphone gimbal, you can skip this part of the video because I'm going to show you how to do it on the OM3. So with the OM3, pretty much there's a clamp system that you're going to use, and you want to set your smartphone as center as possible. Now, while holding the right arm of the gimbal, set your camera to horizon mode and see if it leans left or right. If it does, simply slide the phone to the opposite side that it's leaning to until it stops leaning to one side. Next, set the phone upright into portrait mode and see which side it leans to again. If it does lean to one side, simply adjust the clamp length on the back end of the gimbal until you have, once again, a balanced gimbal. All right, now you're all set with both of these positions balanced. You are ready to turn on your gimbal and you'll have a much smoother experience. Now we're going to hop on to DJI Mimo app and change some settings from there. All right, so the first setting you're gonna wanna actually change here is to calibrate the gimbal. Because every smartphone has a different weight and center of gravity, you wanna do this so that your gimbal is best suited for your smartphone. So we do that by clicking the three dots in the bottom left corner. And we go into the second menu, which is actually called the gimbal menu. And on the third option down, you see Gimbal Auto Calibration. Simply click Calibrate, make sure you're on a flat surface, and then click Start. Now the DJI Gimbal will go through an automated process of calibrating your gimbal, checking all the different positions and angles such that it can actually handle your smartphone's weight and center of gravity. This also really helps with setting the horizon, but if this fails to actually set the horizon evenly, you have one more option. Once again, we're going to hit the three dots in the bottom left corner. And under the gimbal auto calibration that we just did, there's actually horizontal gimbal adjustment. Select that. And you have plus or minus, and depending on which way you need to go, you may adjust that. I think in my case, it's pretty well centered, maybe one adjustment or two adjustments right. I like to use the grid lines to see what's up, straight up and down and left to right. And I'll think at 3 was really good. So I'll leave it at that. All right, so now we've properly balanced the gimbal, calibrated it to our phone, and set the horizon level so that our images aren't lopsided. Let's go into other settings that you can use to improve your quality of the content. So some settings I really recommend going through is the controls. So we'll go into the three dots menu. We're gonna go down and we're gonna go to zoom speed. Depending on the shot that you're going for, you can either have this at slow, medium, or fast. Obviously fast is more dramatic, slow is a little more controlled. I like it at slow because I don't like too dramatic of a movement. Next up, the M button. It typically is in photo video mode. This basically just allows you to quickly swap between photo and video by pressing the M button. I don't find that super useful, so instead what I like to do is actually change that to menu mode. And when you have it in menu mode, when you press the M button, you can go through all the menus and options really quickly. So I find that to be much more useful than photo video. Lastly, you have control stick speed and direction. Control stick speed is not super useful because I don't often use the pan feature. But if you do, I find slow is probably better because you want more control. And last but not least, control stick direction. It's typically on free. So basically, if I go at an angle with my control stick, it'll go at an angle too. Can be useful, but I find myself using horizontal vertical more often. So I can just go perfectly left to right or perfectly up and down. So there you go. Those are some quick settings I highly recommend you go through so that you can capture the type of content that you want with the control settings that you want. All right, finally, let's go into some of the video settings you want to adjust so that you can have ultimate control and highest quality from your smartphone. So we're gonna hop onto the app once again, select the three dots on the bottom left corner, and if you go to the camera menu, or actually the video menu, which is the little aperture picture, you're gonna want to change your white balance. Right now, my thing is locked, but normally you can select that and set manual based on weather conditions, the type of lighting that you're in. But typically what I like to use is actually the Kelvin scale and just slide that thing up and down until the image looks like it does to your eyes. If you go too low, it can end up being too blue. If you go too high, it ends up being too orange. Just find that medium, because if you have it on auto, oftentimes the white balance will change and your video and colors will change with that. So you don't really want that to happen. So definitely set your white balance here in this menu. In that same menu, you do have grid lines. I like to have those. You can also turn on diagonals if that's your thing, but I find just grid lines is more than enough. Next up, you actually can adjust the resolution and frame rate of your camera. You select the frame rate at the very top. Depending on your camera, you may not have 4K, but if you do, I highly recommend filming in that because that just increases the quality of your videos. So go into 4K and you have a few options for frame rate. 24 FPS is standard for Hollywood films. If you're in Europe or other parts of the world besides the US, 25 is that standard. Then you have 30 frames per second, which can be used to be slowed down to about 80% speed, which is sometimes useful, but oftentimes people just film 30 FPS because that's the default in most iPhones and smartphones. Last but not least, you have 60 FPS, which is really useful for capturing slow-mo. In this option, you can slow it down about 40%, which is pretty nice. Of course, with 30 frames and 60 frames, you don't have to slow it down, but it's just a good option to have. So if you're not sure if you're gonna use slow-mo, I recommend just going with 60 FPS. It just might take a lot more memory on your smartphone. So now we've set our resolution and frame rate. We should always shoot in manual mode. So you select manual from there. And here's where it gets interesting. I won't go into too much detail, but ISO is how sensitive your camera's sensor is to light. And typically you want this as low as possible because the higher it goes, the noisier the image gets. So you generally just want that as low as possible. I like putting it in auto, but then changing the max to 100 or 200. Last but not least, you have your shutter speed here. And typically if you want to capture the most natural looking motion blur, you want to set your shutter speed to double your frame rate. So in the case of 24 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be 1/48, but as you can see, most cameras don't have that option, so the closest one is 1/50. And now when you actually record like that, you'll see there's a decent amount of motion blur in the picture. Whereas if we set the shutter speed to something higher, like 1/160, there is less motion blur. So that's just something to keep in mind. I highly recommend just keeping it double the frame rate. Of course, if you're outside, this may not always be ideal. So you might have to use either an ND filter, which may not work with your gimbal because in my case, the iPhone 13 is the max payload. So I can't add any attachments to the iPhone without messing up the gimbal. But if you have a smaller iPhone or a smaller smartphone, you may be able to attach an ND filter, which allows you to dim the image that's going into your camera without having to sacrifice shutter speed or ISO. Otherwise, if you don't have that luxury like I don't, all you can really do is increase the shutter speed such that the exposure is right for the settings that you have outside. All right, there you have it. Now you are capturing the highest quality video you can on your smartphone using your DJI Gimbal. So these are simple but very powerful tips that you need to know when shooting with a smartphone so that you can really optimize the quality of your content and the camera that you have. Smartphone cameras are getting better every year, but knowing these fundamentals will ensure that no matter what model you're working with, you're gonna capture the highest quality video possible. So I really hope this video was insightful and helpful to you guys. If it was, please leave a like and subscribe because that really helps me and tells me that this content is serving you guys. If you have any recommendations for other videos or other pieces of equipment that you want me to teach you guys, leave a comment down below. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.